Nancy and Bill, it's a great pleasure to be here with y'all. It's a great pleasure to have this occasion, and I think it's going to be really fun to talk about the topics we've been given to talk about. And this is, although it's Nancy's birthday, everybody's supposed to participate. So first thing that I think we should do, and I'll give the microphone to Nancy first, is talk a little bit about the family tree as far back as the grandparents, parents, aunts, uncle, who you particularly remember and who you think would be interesting to talk about and for our children's children to see about on video.
Well, I remember all my grandparents, but the ones in Holly Springs were right there, a block away from our house. And we didn't see the ones in New Albany more often than once a week, but we did see them pretty often. And I might start with Papa Sage because he was the oldest. He was born in 1866. And his father was, now this is sort of folklore, his father was a soldier in the war between the states and he never came home. And we found a grave in the Shiloh National Cemetery that said William H. Sage. And he died in the Battle of Shiloh, but he was on the wrong side.
He was buried on the wrong side. And I once asked Mama,
okay, well,
he could have been on the wrong side. He was in the Yankee Cemetery.
He was in the National Cemetery. It's a national cemetery.
And I once asked either Mama or one of her sisters who told me that story, said, what do you think about that? And she said, we wondered.
I think it was Grandma Sage that was asked. They asked one of the sisters what Grandma Sage thought about it, and they said she wondered. So that was kind of a mystery. And then Grandma Sage was a member of a family named Morrison, and they were from Pontotoc County, which Papa Sage was too, over at Ecru. And Grandma Sage and Papa Sage married, and her name was Nora Ann Morrison, and his name was William Henry Sage. They married and lived in Ecru, and they had 9 girls, and 5 of them survived, and our mother was the youngest of the 5. The oldest was Ola. She was married to Uncle Couple Tucker, J.C. Tucker, and they always lived in Ecru. She was born, I think, in 1895. The next one was May, and it was said that her name was Mady, and it's also been said it was May spelled M-A-I, but she was spelling it May, M-A-Y by the time we knew her. She worked in the Bank of Holly Springs, and I think she had worked in the Ecru Bank before she moved to Holly Springs, but Uncle Gideon, her husband, Gideon Hill, was the manager of the Coca-Cola plant in Holly Springs. It was owned by Mr. McGill in New Albany and the Pigeon family in Memphis. And so they got him up there to be the manager, and Aunt May and he were married, and they lived in Holly Springs. And Aunt May worked in the Bank of Holly Springs, and when Mama went to school, I think they moved to New Albany so she could go to high school in New Albany, and she did. And then she went to MSCW for 1 year, and then she went to Blue Mountain College for about 2 or 3 years, but she did not graduate. And the Depression was on then, so Aunt May invited her to come live with her in Holly Springs and work at the Bank of Holly Springs, which she did. And the Daddy's law office, Daddy in Luster was a lawyer, and Daddy had gone to Harvard Law School, and he got out of law school. The Depression was on. He didn't know exactly what he would do, so he just thought he'd go up into his daddy's law office till he decided what to do. And the office was upstairs from the Bank of Holly Springs. And so Daddy had a good knowledge of what was going on down at the bank. And he went down there and thought Mama was really pretty and asked her for a date. And she was really chagrined that he did that just right out there in the public eye. But she went to the Rotary Ann Valentine's banquet with him. And then one thing led to another and they got married.
And here we are, and I think we should comment that we have another William Henry Sage right here in our midst. William Henry Sage fan.
I was going to ask if Papa Sage must have been the third. Is that right?
Papa Sage was the son of the Confederate soldier.
Who was senior?
Well, I don't know what number he was. It just said William Henry Sage on his tombstone.
So he was at least second. He was at least second.
Right.
Papa Sage was at least the second person with the name.
Yeah, but he never knew his father. His father was killed before he was born.
And that was the Civil War soldier.
Yeah.
Well, there is a little previously unknown by me mystery here. Mm-hmm. In the Battle of Shiloh was in 1862.
I know it.
And Papa Sage was born in 1866.
Yes,
and so I'm going to say that it done completely.
It doesn't completely. Well, as somebody said, what did Grandma Sage say? Think about it. She wondered.
Yeah.
We still wondering.
We still wondering about that one, yeah.
But anyway, somebody had the dates wrong.
Right. The dates are wrong. That's what it is.
But I don't know how he got buried in the National Cemetery in Shiloh if
he was the Confederate soldier.
Well, they didn't ever say it, but they just said he was in it, so we assumed he was on that side.
But there is one.
He would have had Yankee dog tags, wouldn't he?
No, they didn't have no dog tags. The people wrote little notes and put their names on them.
They put little slips of paper on them and pins.
But there is another possibility, which is that there was another person from Pennsylvania or somewhere who happened to be named William Henry Sage.
Well, yeah, that's a possibility.
So we'll just keep wondering about that. And
well, they have his number and everything in the United States Army, and somebody that wanted to could, do some research back on using the dog tag numbers that they have. But
we'd rather wonder, maybe.
Might be better to wonder.
Okay, so let's move on over to Holly Springs and the family in Holly Springs.
Wait, I wanted to know about Nancy's relationship with Papa Sage and Grandma Sage, and particularly my memory of Grandma Sage was that she was very shy and retiring and didn't have much
she didn't say anything. I didn't think about her being shy. I didn't think like that. But Papa Sage was real old, and he was.
So in '37 he was 71. And
well, he was born in 1866. Yeah.
In 37, he's 71, but I knew him in the 50s.
Well, he died in 46.
He did.
They both died in 46.
Well, I knew him. I can remember him, so I knew him before.
Well, he was real old, and he never did say much to me. I think he kind of belonged to the school where the women stayed together and the men stayed together, because that was the case over there. But there was a men's room and a women's room, and the men and women never ate together and they never sat together. And I just knew him when I saw him, but I don't remember having any dealings with him.
Do you remember him chewing tobacco?
No, but he could have done it.
Because that is. It could be just like I didn't have the date right, it's not true, but I think I have a memory of him
chewing and spitting, maybe.
Chewing and spitting, and it's the only person at that time I'd ever seen do so.
Well, he probably did chew and spit, and I think he liked to go out on the back porch, and that would tie in with that.
That's where I saw that, yeah.
And did you, so you had most of a relationship with the sisters, with the aunts?
Well, I had a relationship with Grandma Sage, yeah. Grandma Sage was about 10 years younger than he. She was about the age of Lester. And see, he went all the way back to 1866. And that would have made him pretty old when I first knew him. But Grandma Sage was Morrison, and that was a very well respected family in Eckrich. And she had some sisters and brothers. She had brothers whom I did not know, and I think all but about one of them went to Texas. There was a big movement out of Mississippi to Texas. A lot of people stayed in Mississippi after the War of 1861 to 1865, and about 1895 they decided things weren't going to get any better and they just go on to Texas.
Well, I have a recollection that kind of goes to Bill's point, I think, and I also have a question. Did the house that Uncle Cooper and Aunt Ola live in Ecru, was that the old Morrison house? Was that Grandma Sage's house? Or that?
Uncle Cooper belonged to was a Tucker, and they were a prominent, substantially financial family in Ecru. And they had a store, and the store went broke, and Uncle Cooper insisted on paying all the debts that his father owed, even though he was not made to. He insisted on doing it, and he spent the rest of his life paying off those debts. The store failed, and he worked for somebody else, and did that. He was a very fine.
I loved it. He's always smiling and joking.
He was a member of a really prominent family in Pontotoc County. There were 4 other girls who died before Mama was born, and I'm not sure where they fit in, but I think those 3 oldest ones were pretty close together. I think Ola, and then May, and then maybe one of the others,
Deceased,
and then Esther, who was called Wewe, and then 2 others who died, and then Burley, whose real name was Willie Bell, and Mama, Gladys. That's the way it was. And I went up there and went to the cemetery, and I had all the names and dates and everything. I have them somewhere.
I've got 2 other questions, and maybe they're insubstantial, but one is, why did they give Mama the privilege of going to high school? Does that mean they didn't give it to the other girls?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about that. They had a school in Ecru, and I think Aunt Ola and Uncle Cooper married when Aunt Ola was 18, so she wouldn't have gone to school. And then Aunt May got a job in the bank, and she was born like in 96, 97 or something like that, so it was probably World War I was probably on when she came along. And she was going with Uncle Gideon, and he fought for the American Army, and he went across the water. And so she was working in the Bank of Ecru till he came back, and then they got married. And then when Wewe came along, she married Uncle Gideon's younger brother, Uncle Wild. And they wanted to talk about it, but they moved to New Albany when Mama was 12 years old, and I think one reason they moved was that Papa Sage had a bigger store in New Albany. Papa Sage was doing better, and he thought he'd move to New Albany where they could go and finish high school and go. And then I don't know what Aunt Bertie did. I think she ran off and married, but Mama went to Blue Mountain, MSCW in Blue Mountain.
And there was just more opportunity in New Albany, I'm sorry.
Fun education, yeah.
But also, we have pictures, Bill has a picture, I have a picture you probably had of Papa Sage in his store in New Albany.
Yeah, in New Albany.
A big looking
it's
store.
A real good looking store, W.H. Sage and Company, General Merchandise or something like that, yeah.
When did Darden Lake get started? And do you remember going there when you were young?
Yeah, Darden Lake was organized by a group of people, and they had stockholders, and Papa Sage was invited to be in it, and he was a stockholder and owned the property where he built a cabin out there. And I don't know when it was probably right after World War I would be my guess, but I'm not sure. But anyway, it was organized as a Christian place of some probably Baptist or maybe just Christian, but anyway, swimming and fishing on Sunday were strictly forbidden. You could do swimming and fishing other days, but not on Sunday. And they had a big singing or something that we didn't attend, but it was a big group singing. And sometimes they had baptizings in Darden Lake too.
Well, those halls, Susan's relatives still go there. They have some kind of establishment.
Yeah, I mean,
Susan's mother's been there.
It was a big deal then, and Susan's history will tell you it's still a big deal.
Yeah. And I will tell you one memory I have of Mama at the garden at Darden Lake, which was a little hurtful to me. But I caught fish. A whole bunch of little fish I caught and put them on a stringer. And I had a stringer full of little fish, and they were down in the water, and the stringer was tied to a little dock piling. And I went to try to get Mama to come see all the fish I got, and kept trying, and she was talking, took a while, and finally she came down there, and I told her I had these fish, and I pulled them up, and it was the stringer with a bunch of fish skeletons. And a snapping turtle had eaten all the fish while we're waiting, and Mama did exactly what Nancy did, which is die laughing. I was mortified.
Well, it's just sad as it can be, but
Well, I don't know who Gavin is, but here's a question. Why did Gavin stop talking to Aunt May?
maybe that's Gladys.
Yeah, it's a typo or something.
Mama and Aunt May quit speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know what it was about. What that was told to me anyway. Aunt May drove in Holly Springs, and she would drive to New Albany, but she did not drive to Memphis. And they drew names in the five girls drew names every Christmas for Christmas presents. And one year, Mama drew Aunt May's name. And so she decided to go to Memphis and buy her a Christmas present and not tell Aunt May she was going. And some way, Aunt May found out that Mama had gone to Memphis and not invited her or taken her. Mm-hmm. And see, Aunt May was 15 years older than Mama, and she had let Mama live with her all those years. So she felt that Mama was obligated to her. Mm-hmm. You know, she had to call her every day and invite her everywhere and everything. And so she just got made to quit speaking.
Well, I know that, okay, when Mama was 70 years old, she would not let Aunt May see her smoking.
She never let any of them see her smoke. It wasn't just Aunt May, the rest of them, no, she wouldn't.
Yeah. And I didn't know that, sir, but I remember very well when you got married and Mama was in the hospital, and Aunt May came into our house and put up bricks and boards and built a tiered thing to see the presents on, and it just drove Mama crazy. But partly because it was her house, and partly because that wasn't the way she wanted it done, I think.
Well, she didn't like anybody coming in her house and
doing something, bringing
constructive.
So we're going to move over to the other side, the Fant side of the family, the Holly Springs side of the family, and talk about what you kind of recall about grandparents and over there and their siblings and so forth.
Okay. Well, Lester was Lester Fant. He was born in 1875, and he had a brother whose name was Leon, who was very close to him in age. He also had a sister whose name was Selden, S-E-L-D-E-N. And then there was somebody else. There was a fourth.
Was it McCaskey? No,
that was Selden.
James Fant, who was in Texas. He was in the one who became the baker, who had the flour mill.
That was Euclid.
Euclid, okay, who had James. So Euclid was, there were the four. Euclid
was a good business person.
Yeah. And here is the thing that is surprising. The father of those four children was named Selden.
Yeah.
And he named his daughter after himself instead of any of his three sons. And I've always been puzzled by that.
Well, I'm not sure the date of his daughter's birth or anything. But the father died in the yellow fever epidemic of 1878.
Lester's father.
So-
And Lester was born in 1875. And I guess Leon was a little bit younger than he was. But I think Selden was the oldest. And she married the son of a Yankee general who was the headmaster at St. Thomas Hall in Holly Springs. And they moved to San Rafael, California and lived out there, which was, I'm sure, a big,
Scandalous.
well, I don't know if it was a scandal, but it was
Daring.
it was very daring, yeah. And then Lester lived in Holly Springs, and Leon went to Texas, and Euclid also went to Texas and started a very successful flour milling business in Sherman, Texas.
It's called Gladiola Flour. And they sponsored country music
They
shows
were
on the radio.
really,
and
yeah.
things like that.
He was kind of a tycoon, so to speak.
And you knew
Lester's
his
business-
grandson. You knew that James Fant
Yeah.
was an actor in New York or something, right?
Yeah, but Lester was the only one that stayed in Holly Springs, and his uncle was a lawyer there, and his uncle kind of helped him get started as a lawyer there.
And his uncle sent him and Leon to Webb School
That's right.
for high school and to Vanderbilt
That's
for
right.
college.
That's right.
That would be James T. Fant. And James T. Fant was a Methodist, prominent in many ways, but he was a Methodist layman. And so he was appointed to the board of Vanderbilt
Vanderbilt, that's
University. And because, although he himself had been to Ole Miss, because of that connection, he sent Lester and Leon to Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt, yeah. But he was the only one of his brothers and sisters, I think, who had a college education. And he finished Ole Miss before the Civil War. So he had a step up
Right.
from the rest of his brothers and sisters.
Yeah. He went to Ole Miss Law School too. And then he married.
He read law
Yeah.
in Major William Strickland's law office.
And he married Alexander, what's his name? Heath Stevens? No.
He married somebody big.
Yeah, Clara Clayton, Alexander Clayton.
Clayton.
And
Yeah.
he was quite, he had been a trustee of Ole Miss.
And Clara
one-
Clayton was
Yeah.
kind of prominent in her own right, too.
She was. And Alexander Clayton was is given credit for making Ole Miss like the first or the second state university to accept women students. And so he was a pretty well known person. And I think he helped out James T. Fant probably a good deal.
Probably so.
We are going to visit now our maternal grandmother's family, who we had a lot of contact with.
Her maternal family was
Right.
the Leach family, Leach, and they were from up around Bolivar, Tennessee.
Really?
And LaGrange.
Well, they,
South.
Rossville and
LaGrange,
Rossville, but there's another real small town like Rossville and something.
Moscow, and some. Billy Yancey
City.
says the Leaches own all of Somerville to this day.
I think Somerville and Rossville are the two places I'm trying to think
Okay.
of. The Leaches were, old Mr. Leach, who was my great-grandfather, was named Joshua Gilbert Leach. And incidentally, Gilbert is a very prominent family up in Nolensville, Tennessee, which is real close to Nashville. So somebody back behind, further back than that, was a Gilbert. His name was Joshua Gilbert Leach. And he was related to somebody named William Leach. He was a son of somebody named William Leach, but he also had a brother who was named that. And the first one was supposed to be buried in the LaGrange Cemetery, but he never has been located.
And I think that what I have heard, and I can ask you this, I guess, what do you know about Joshua Gilbert Leach's service in the Civil War, the war between the states?
Well, he wanted to join the Army, the Confederate Army, and he was too young, so he went as a drummer boy. And we've always kind of thought that's where our musical talent got started with the drummer boy for the Confederate Army.
What's your musical talent?
I don't have any.
Well, you know, in God with the Wind, there was a little drummer boy who was beating the drums, and they lost the battle, and he was crying. His brother or somebody had been killed, but he was still beating the drums. And that was our visual memory of how.
Yeah, and what I've been told is that he, as the war went on, he got older and got to be a regular soldier and served for 4 years and surrendered at Appomattox, and was a very unusual person because he never got a scratch on you.
Well,
he took part in 4 years of war.
Somebody was with Lee at Appomattox, and I don't know if that was he or not. I think there are a lot of people in the South who claim
that they
somebody was with Lee at Appomattox, and I'm not sure Appomattox was.
If it had that many people, they wouldn't have to surrender.
If they had that many people up there, they probably would have won the battle.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know. Somebody was with Lee at Appomattox, and it might have been
Joshua.
Old Man Leach,
Okay.
They called him Old Man Leach.
Okay, well, I of course never knew him. You never knew him, but they weren't even talking about him much. But they talked a lot about the jug factory.
Yeah, he came to Holly Springs and started the jug factory, I think.
Yeah.
He after the shooting was over, people who were enterprising just turned around and walked off and started businesses. Some sat around and talked about if we had just done this or if we had just done that or Lee had kept on fighting or something. But this one turned around and started the jug factory in Holly Springs and, became prosperous.
And he had the Booker store.
Well, he married Mary Leach. Wait, no.
Married.
Somebody married Mary Leach, and she married Mr. Ed Booker.
Yeah, well, that was one of his daughters. That was one of Daw's sisters.
Okay.
That was one of
Joshua Gilbert Leach then
Yeah.
was Daw's father, and Daw's older sister was Mary Leach. She married Mr. Ed Booker and started Booker Hardware. I think it was her money, and it was Mr. Leach's store.
It was Mr. Leach's store, and she got the store, and it became Booker's, which still exists as one of the oldest stores.
But we have a picture of the store that says J.G. Leach and Company. It's not one J.G. Leach and Sons, because he didn't have a son, but J.G. Leach and Company on the sign, and now it's Booker Hardware, and that was Mary Leach's husband.
Did they live down there on Chulahoma?
Well, I don't know where they lived. I think they lived in the Leach house with Daw and Lester.
They lived
Which one
with
was
Daw
that?
and Lester.
On where the Robinson house is?
Well, there was where Billy Lyles lived.
Yeah.
Well, that was their house, and it was up there where Maggie Totten's house is. But it was, that's where Daw and them grew up.
And Daw has told me that after Mary Leach died, Ed Booker just lived with them for several more years.
He did, yeah.
And then he got married to Miss Maurice, or whoever he married.
But then that's why they always took Daw riding. Mr. Booker and Mom Bo would go by every Sunday afternoon to get Daw and take a ride because she was family, yeah.
And there's also a town in Arkansas called Leachville, Arkansas, that Joshua Gilbert Leach, he bought up all this land for timber, and it was a timber camp. And it was named after him. And I've read kind of Hubert sent me his obituary, and he was very, very highly thought of. And endowed his girls pretty well.
And then he married again Miss Nellie Stevenson, and she was from down at Aberdeen, and she was the fine musician. And he would walk her down the aisle of the church and up to the organ to play the organ every Sunday.
Really?
He said he was very proud of her.
Mm-hmm. And they had one daughter, Pauline,
Yeah.
but with the
Now,
other,
what about that picture I gave you?
yeah.
Where is it?
I don't have it with me right now. It's in my home.
Which
Well,
one
I
is
want it.
Okay.
Which one is it?
It's a picture of Daw and Big Abu and Pauline and Corinne Martin
On the occasion of
of
Daw's
Daw's
80th
80th
birthday.
Right.
which it should be brought to this party.
It should be. I should
I
have brought it.
can- I
They're
can-
sitting on the sofa in
In our house.
Walthall House.
Yeah.
Walthall.
I can get it.
He got it on the line. He can get it online.
Okay,
I think-
well, get it.
And
Get
yeah,
it for today because it needs to be shown at the party.
yeah.
mhm.
That's important, for compare Daw and me.
So for
Daw had on a short sleeve dress. Now she was 80 years old and she had on a short sleeve dress. I can't imagine.
And it was in November.
Yeah, November the 2nd. But I can't imagine a lady that age showing her arms, because your arms, this part of your arm is the first thing to go. And,
well, and I think that for the historical record, we should give the given names here. So, our grandmother was Cordelia Leach Fant. She was known as Daw.
DAH.
D-A-H, thank you. She had but other people had other names for her.
Oh, yeah.
People called her Dee Dee,
Dee-Dah.
Dee-Dah. Everybody in town had a
Everybody
name.
did.
Nobody could pronounce the word Cordelia at that time, so everybody had a little name for her. But we
Dee
called
Dee.
her Dah.
yeah, but a lot of people called her Dee Dee.
Yeah.
And Charles Dean called her Dee-Dah.
Dee-Dah. Okay, so there you go. She had one sister named Ruth Leach who married a man named Thomas Finley. They lived very close to us in Holly Springs, and they were essentially part of the family. She had another sister named Margaret Leach who never married, but she worked, but she never married. And sometime, I was probably in the 40s, she had a disabling stroke that didn't disable her. She put
1944.
1944. She put on the braces and lived a very full life thereafter. But
Drove a car, everything.
She had a car as soon as automatic transmission came out, and she had that Burleson make who was a blacksmith we knew, make a way that she could control the car with one hand.
And
She
they
a
had
knob.
no physical therapy or anything
No.
then whatsoever. And she figured out ways to
do
enable
anything.
her to do anything she wanted to.
And so she lived with Dah, our
Yeah.
grandmother, during our period of growing up. And then there was the fourth sister, Mary, who I think had tuberculosis or something, who was married
did.
to
She's
Mr. Ed Book,
married.
and she died. So the three sisters were and then Pauline was a half sister who was also really good to me, and she let me drive her car and all that. She was. She was good to me, but the core were these three sisters, and they were everything we did, Christmas and everything else. Those three sisters and Uncle Tom and his daughter, everybody was going to be present.
Well, I couldn't even go out to Johnny's. They had a truck stop outside of Holly Springs, about 2 miles out, that I was forbidden to go. And of course, all the teenagers went out there, and we didn't even go in. We'd just go in out there and circle around the car and come back up to the square and go around the square. But Mama had told me I could not go to Johnny's. And Big Abu and Pauline and them lived on the way to Johnny's. And so they would see me going by in a car, and they'd call up Mama and tell her she's on the way out there right now.
She's probably good. Well, and this takes us back to Uncle Gideon and Aunt May, and Aunt May was a real scold, I think. And she was always out driving. She had a great big, and she called it 4-hole Buick. A Buick with four
Portholes, uh-huh.
And she drove around and spied on me all the time, and often told on me, like I was riding my bicycle in the street or something like that. But I could have done anything as long as she never saw me drink a Pepsi Cola. Because her husband, and to her, Pepsi Cola was the worst sin in the world.
Yeah.
And it's unforgivable to drink it. You could drink whiskey, smoke cigarettes, do anything else. She would disapprove of it, but nothing compared to having a Pepsi Cola in your hand.
And she would say, somebody would say something about, have you seen so-and-so? She'd say, Pepsi Cola crowd.
Yeah. She was a scold. And she always had, plenty of criticism for me. Uncle Gideon, her husband, was very good to me and would take me fishing, which Daddy could not do without getting the car stuck in the mud.
You know what Jack Vitchin said to me one time? Yeah. Jack Vitchin was married to a friend of mine, we teased. Yeah. And so they had a big bus load from Holly Springs to go down to Starkville to the Ole Miss and State game. And I mean, it was a Greyhound, chartered Greyhound bus, and Uncle Gideon went, and just by himself, and Jack went. I don't know whether he took Wheatie or not, but when I saw Jack the next time, Jack said, "Nancy, is it Uncle Gideon?" No, Gideon.
Uncle Gideon, his hobby was fishing, and he had very, very elaborate fishing equipment. And he was kind to me. He would take me fishing. He let me sell Cokes at the Ole Miss football games in the grandstand and watch the games for free and make some money. And he was really, he was a kind man.
Oh yeah.
But and Aunt May always said when Uncle Gideon died, I would get all of his fishing equipment. And so
did you ever get it?
When Uncle Gideon died, I was his executor, so I went to get the fishing equipment, and in that garage there was one plug that somebody else didn't want.
Somebody had already.
Yeah, somebody else got all Uncle Gideon. This says Bill told the story of Nancy and Sammy at the furniture store in Holly Springs.
Do you remember that?
May and Jones.
Well, the one close to the Bank of Holly Springs.
Yeah, that'd be May.
Yeah, that one. Do you remember?
Probably they had told me to come in there and pick out a bedroom suit or something when we were gonna get married.
And you took me. I think you had already been married, and you took me to the store, and I said, "You need one of those, don't you?" And I was pointing to a baby bed, and you got really mortified about it. No, you don't need one of those.
Okay, do you have anything to say about Coach Winsit's car? And before you answer that, I want to say this. I was telling my wife, Susan, that this was going to be a question, and she said, "Winsit? You had a coach named Winsit?" And I had never before thought how funny that was, that the coach's name was Winsit.
I hadn't either.
Until
right then.
I didn't until Susan said, "That's the funniest thing I've heard."
No, that was not Coach Winsett. That was somebody that lived across the street from Helen.
Okay.
That was a crippled man that worked up at Levy's. Helen lived right across kind of from the school.
Right.
And there was a duplex apartment house that was owned by Miss Sally Robinson, right across the street from her, and Miss Sally lived in one side of it, and this crippled man who worked at Levy's lived on the other side. Now, I don't know why the crippled man left his car in the street, and I don't know how he got to work, but he was at work, and his car was by the house, and Helen and I had J.W. Lewis to come out there and jump it off for us, and we rode round and round the football field waving at the football ball.
How old were you? Oh, great.
Now, Nancy, what is your favorite childhood memory?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Matey Harper was mighty important to me.
And
Lester was, I would say Lester and Matey Harper were the two people I loved the best.
How far back did Matey go in your life, from to the beginning almost? No.
She, I had somebody else when I was a baby, but she was, I don't remember when she came to work.
Do you remember when you gave me the bad news?
What bad news?
You said you loved Matey and aspired to be like her, and Matey was quite large. Today they would say she was obese. And Nancy said to me when I was little, "Now Ruff, if you eat your butter beans, you can get fat like Matey, but you can never be black." And that was viewed as a tragedy.
It was a
Because
tragedy.
it's impossible to get to be like me.
I wanted to be black worse than anything. I knew if I ate real good and tried real hard, I could be like Matey, but I could never be black. And I wanted to be black worse than anything. Matey was the most perfect person. I loved her so much, and I think I didn't have there was no conditional clause in the love for her. I just thought she was perfect.
And there's no conditional clause in her love for you.
No, that's right.
And
I was the same way about Lester, too.
Mm-hmm.
But Matey was around a lot longer than Lester was.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know that Lester was so close to you, and so that kind of bypassed Mom and Daddy and Da. And
Very much Da.
He was the
Lester was the apple of I was the apple of his eye. He walked over and got me every afternoon at 5 o'clock and carried me in his arms down to see 106 every afternoon at 5 o'clock.
And for the historic record, 106 was a train that came to town.
It was a passenger train.
Oh, it was.
Mm-hmm. And this is the kind of a person he was. I was 3 and he taught me, the number of the train.
Mm-hmm.
106. And then also they had the semaphores were down the track kind of by Salem Bridge, and he taught me what the semaphores meant. If it was down, the train was in the block. If it was up, it meant the train had stopped. All different things about the semaphores. And but he carried me in his arms down there, and I loved it better than anything. And there's a picture of him holding me up to the car, and the conductor is standing there talking to us.
Mm-hmm.
They knew I was coming every afternoon. And then when the war came on, we'd go down there. I don't think Lester was going then, but we'd go down to the train, and the soldiers would throw pennies at us.
Mm-hmm. That was nice. And
Were they on board the train? I'm sorry.
Well,
The soldiers?
certainly.
Yeah, it's a troop train.
It was a troop train.
All the trains were loaded.
When the war came on, they were troop trains. But before that, when Lester used to take me, they were passenger trains.
Mm-hmm. Now, on the subject of trains, do you remember your travel to Sophie Newcomb College?
Mm-hmm.
Where did you how did you travel, and where did you catch the train?
Well, Daddy was the local attorney for the Illinois Central Railroad. And so the train came through Batesville, Mississippi, which was about 50 or 60 miles from Holly Springs. And they would take me over there to Batesville, somebody would, and I would take the train and get down there to New Orleans, and there would be some taxis lined up there, and we'd take a taxi over to the college. And
Because it wasn't just you on the train that was a Newcomb student.
Well,
Others might have come along.
the train made up in Chicago. The train went from New Orleans to Chicago. And so the train made up in Chicago, and there were people on it from that far north.
On down.
But the part that I remember most about it was that the train itself didn't stop in Batesville.
Yes, it did.
It was a whistle stop.
No,
and
it
we
wasn't.
would save up and use some of them. Yeah.
Senatobia, it was a flag stop, but it always stopped in Batesville.
Well, sometime then we'd go to Senatobia, because I can remember Daddy saving
Getting
up
out
newspapers and lighting the newspapers and waving it, and the train would stop. And
Well, that was Senatobia.
And we'd be standing on the gravel, and you'd have your little cosmetic bag and get on the train and Senatobia, for geographic reference, was a lot closer to Holly Springs than Batesville.
Oh, yeah, but Batesville was the main.
It was a real stop,
Batesville
yeah.
was a real stop.
Who was Miss Stripes Absolutely?
Well, I was an only child until I was 4 years old. And I had my good friend, who lived close to me, Witty, and I had some other friends too. But I had 2 imaginary friends, Miss Stripes Absolutely and Miss Sally Burr. And Miss Sally Burr, it was just, I thought that was a high class pronunciation of a last name, Miss Sally Burr.
It was a French pronunciation.
I don't know what language it was, but anyway, and Miss Stripes Absolutely. And so Miss Stripes Absolutely, and in those days, Mama's friends, a lot of them called each other Miss. And, you know, like I'd call a friend Miss, and the friend would call her Miss. And so Miss Stripes Absolutely and Miss Sally Burr were my friends, and they would talk to each other. And one of them would say, well, or maybe I was talking to him too. I said, well, we're going to Memphis today. That was a big deal to go to Memphis. And we, you sit on the front seat, and Sally can sit on the back seat, going and then coming back. Stripes can, you know,
So this answers. So they were your age.
well, we were all grown ladies.
Oh,
we were all grown ladies
okay,
going to Memphis, you know. Driving the car and going to Memphis. If I was driving the car,
you should see the other people.
I was, I was grown, and we were going to Memphis, and we'd go up there and get on Main Street and separate, and walk around Main Street and shop and do around, come back to Holly Springs.
And never leave your bedroom, right?
Well, we just talked.
Yeah.
It was just a conversation. Yeah, but they were named Miss Sally Burr and Miss Stripes Absolutely, and then. I think everybody that has ever heard it thinks that Stripes Absolutely is just a wonderful
great
name
name.
for somebody.
Okay, and in that vein, who was Jim Evian?
That was your friend. He was your friend. He was a sailor man.
He was Jim Evian, the sailor man. This was in the Second World War.
Yeah.
And he was always Jim Evian, the sailor. He was not as well developed as Miss Stripes Absolutely and Miss Sally Burr, and he might have been after their time. They might have, they might have moved on. But when we lived at Virginia Beach, was Jim Evian's kind of prime time.
Probably was about the age then that I was when I had Stripes and Sally.
Okay, so let's go back to, we've talked about the Leach side of the family. Let's talk about kind of your recollections of Daddy.
Okay.
And the things that were prominent recollections to you from your childhood.
Okay, well, the first thing I remember about Daddy was that when he would come home, he came home for dinner in the middle of the day, and he would come home, and I would be sitting in my high chair at the table in the breakfast room, and he would be sitting over here where he sat, and he would walk across the table with his fingers to get me to eat. That's what I remember.
In a scary way, or?
No, it was in a fun way.
Okay.
He was real fun like that. And then he would go back to the office, and I never did go down to the office or anything. A lot of children go to the office, but we never went to the office. We never called the office. We never did have any dealings with the office. After I was grown, probably knew Miss Winnie, but not before. It was strictly off limits.
Yeah, and you know, Da and Mama would never go to court.
Da never had been in the courthouse.
Thinking back about Daddy, the two of the things that are kind of anomalies to me within the context of his normal behavior are his running for the legislature. I don't know if you were born yet when he did that, running for it on the motorcycle, and then running for Chancery Court judge, and that just seemed so much more outgoing, you know, than the person I knew.
Well, when I was a little girl, I think I was about 3 years old. That would be about right. He ran for the legislature. I was born in 37, so that would mean he ran in 40. He ran for the legislature, and he was elected, and he had a motorcycle that he made his campaign on, and I think he rode to Jackson on his motorcycle. And all I know was he was in the legislature, and I guess that was a little bit of prestige, and young lawyer around town, you know, it was good for him to be in the legislature, and he knew the legislators.
Well, he told me that he resigned from the legislature in disgust because the budget for the state of Mississippi was $1 million.
Well, that was too much.
Way too much. Yeah, that he just thought they were spending too much money. So he told me he resigned, and I remember very well him telling me about this goes to emphasize Bill's point about, why does a person who was pretty introverted decide to, enter the political spectrum? But he once told me, when I was thinking about going to law school, he said, Ruff, a lawyer must regard, which is the way he would talk, a lawyer must regard the approach of a cloud the way a farmer regards a rattlesnake. Because he just didn't like clowns. He didn't like,
He was not a people person.
No, he wasn't a people.
Not at all.
But I have thought a lot myself. He decided to run for the judgeship when he was 76 years old,
And he needed
which
to.
happens to be my age at this time. And I wondered, well, what got him to give up his kind of reclusive life?
He didn't like the way things were going, and he thought if he were elected to office that he would change things the way they were.
Right.
Things were not going very well for his law firm, and he thought if he got in the legislature he could change things.
And there weren't too many rattlesnakes coming around. But the interesting thing about it to me was he said, I got a calling to run for judge. And that has kind of taken away my hope that all of a sudden something new would come along for me to do, because I don't think I'm going to get a call in.
Why?
I just don't think I might be getting them, but I don't hear them.
I think I think that he, and this has been reiterated by other people, I think he had shell shock after he was sunk in the war. And he agonized over that. He couldn't just say, well, thank God I'm safe and gone with his life. He had to worry about those mules who were drowned and things like that. And of course, that was very traumatic to him. And today, they'd send them to a psychologist, a psychiatrist or something, but they didn't do that then. And I think that was... he was different after that, and I think that was, I think he overcompensated for it or overdid something about it, overreacted to it would be the right expression.
And interesting enough, Da herself, his doting mother, once said to me, your father is a casualty of the war. I think she said he's a war casualty.
Well, so she knew too.
She knew, she knew, and she called him a war casualty, and sometimes I think he was pretty jolly, but it was very infrequent.
He was more, he was introverted and he was intellectual and he had nobody to talk to. And that was why he loved teaching at Ole Miss, because he had Bob Farley and John Fox, and they had so much fun together. But he also had somebody that he could communicate with on an equal basis, and there was nobody in Holly Springs. Now, he liked one or two of the Presbyterian ministers in town late in life, and I think it was because they were intellectual, and he had no intellectual comradeship in Holly Springs.
I've got a journal somewhere of his that indicates that he was depressed upon coming home from Harvard Law.
Oh yeah, I think he was, and he didn't know what to do with himself, and he just stayed in bed all the time.
Ooh.
He stayed in bed, I think, for a month or something like that, and I think his daddy or somebody said, well, why don't you just come on up to my office and you can be up there until you decide what you want to do. And he kind of did that. And then when the war was over, he was in the Navy, and when he got out of the Navy, he considered going to Memphis and practicing law over there, and I think he had some connections over there who could have helped him get a job. Maybe somebody had suggested it to him. And he thought, well, no, Nancy and Ruff would have to go to private school, and it would just be a big mess. And so he just didn't do it.
Yeah, and
he was not a man of action.
He wasn't, and he was very deferential. And Mama told me that once the bishop or somebody was visiting Da and Lester when Daddy was home from Harvard Law School. You know, and he came in and said, "Can I get y'all some coffee?" And then retired. And after he did that, the bishop said to Da, "Where do you get such wonderful white servants?" And that's the way he was. That would be the type of impression, even when he was at Harvard Law School. That would be he wasn't going to join in anything, but can I get you some coffee? Or is anything? We used to go to Ole Miss football games. And after the games were over, we would go to Bob Farley's house. And they would sit for hours and drink.
Oh, yeah.
And
they drank to let the traffic clear.
Yeah, well, that's what they said.
That's what they say. We're going down to Farley's till the traffic clears out.
And it's safe to go. Because it's not safe to go when there's so much traffic.
Yeah.
So we'll go have a 3-hour cocktail party, then we'll go, and there won't be as much traffic.
Yeah, that's right.
And Nancy, do you think that we've got to move a little? Do you think we can at this time reveal the toenail secret?
I know the fingernail. You go ahead.
I had not thought about the toenail secret.
Well, that's good, because that means you hadn't revealed it yet. And if you don't want to disclose it, I'm good with taking it to my grave.
Well, you can tell if you want.
I know it too.
You can tell if you want to. I don't remember what it was.
Well, when Daddy was stationed at Dam Neck, which is basically Norfolk, we lived in a very housing was very short, and so for the winter, we rented a very fancy beachfront house that belonged to rich people called Windswept, because they were not going to use
They
it.
were named Topelman, and they were from North Carolina.
Yeah, and so they, as part of the war effort, made that house available when they weren't going to use it. And it was a house that had radiators, like all houses did, but it had, which you still see, like metal covers over the radiator and little vents in the top of it. And I don't know whose toenail it was, but somebody, Nancy or I, cut a teeter and very, with great gravity, dropped the toenail inside the cover. And we said, that's the toenail secret.
Yeah.
And to this day, I've never told anyone. What famous person in the movies did Johnny Cassidy want to be?
Esther.
Right.
Esther who? The swimmer?
I'm Esther. There was a movie named Meet Me in St. Louis, and one of the 4 girls was named Esther, and one was named Rose. And then there was little Margaret O'Brien. I don't remember what her name was. And then there was a 4th sister also. But
One of them was Judy Garland, right?
Yeah, one was Judy Garland. And I don't know, I think Judy Garland might have been Esther. But Johnny Cassidy would say, I'm Esther.
Yeah, this is why, this is why I had to have Jim Edgin. There's one boy and 2 girls, but one girl and 2 boys, but one of the boys wanted to be Esther. And I didn't want to have anything to do with it. So y'all played together and I had to play with Jim.
Rose was the older sister, and she was just kind of not much of anything, but Esther, I think, was Judy Garland, and that's who Johnny Cassidy wanted to be. But there was another sister. There were 4 sisters.
But the little sister was at
Margaret
the end,
O'Brien.
and she was really good.
She was Margaret O'Brien,
Yeah.
The actress Margaret O'Brien, who was my age.
Okay, we're going to bypass some things here and move on to, there's one more question. We had 2 close family members who we called by numerals, Winnie and Nine.
That's right.
And do you remember how either one of them got the numeral designation instead of having a name?
I know about both of them.
Okay, can you tell that?
Okay, Nine got hers because she was Daddy's aunt, and he started calling her Nine, and she just was always Nine.
Okay,
Daddy
we don't know
started
why
that.
he started to call her.
But she was not too much. Let's see, he was born in 6, and I think she was born in 90. So that would be.
She was born in 80.
No, Dawn
No,
was
she
born.
wasn't. Nine was born in
No,
90.
I thought you meant dog.
Maybe that had something to do with it, yeah.
Daw, maybe Daw was 9 years old when Nine was born. That could be.
Yeah, something like that.
Because Daw's birthday was in November, and 9 was January the 2nd.
So she got that from Daddy, but how did Winnie become one?
Okay, her name was Margaret Catherine, and I called her One Girl.
Mm-hmm.
And then after some length of time calling her One Girl, we just kind of shortened it to Winnie.
Okay. Now, we are going to move forward to passing by.
Can I ask one question about 9? What do you remember? I guess Little Switzerland was being built and opened up about the time you were born, and what do you have any childhood memories of it?
I went up there when I was 3 years old. Mama went on the train, 106. We caught it in Holly Springs. We went to Atlanta. Daddy was trying to get in the army or something in Atlanta, and he met us. He was on maneuvers with the army.
Mm-hmm.
The war hadn't started yet though, but he came to the train station and met us, and we changed trains. We might have spent the night with him, and then we changed trains and went on up to Little Switzerland.
Mm-hmm. Munya and Hack were Sammy's parents.
Mm-hmm. My husband's parents.
Her husband's parents. Tell us about Galatoire's when you and Sammy were there in line.
Well, you had to have a skirt to go into Galatoire's.
Mm-hmm.
You could not go into Galatoire's with a female person could not go into Galatoire's with slacks on. And it was the day of the mini skirts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I had on a skirt, but somebody with me didn't. Is that right?
Somebody in line behind
Somebody
you.
in line behind me didn't, and was just mortified that she couldn't get in Galatoire's because she had on pants. And I said, well, just pull them off and just pull your shirt down and go on in.
Mm-hmm.
Because, the mini skirts were stylish then too, and I think that's what
That's a funny reaction to have a rule you can't wear pants, so she just took her pants off.
Yeah. Well, my blouse I have on right here it wouldn't be really decent, but she could probably pass.
It's nothing is decent. It's as decent as anything.
Yeah, anyway, I suggested that to her, and she did it and got in.
Okay, what did Gigi say when he proposed, and what did he require?
Okay, this is funny. It is really funny. Gigi had decided, we had a bad snowstorm. This is kind of relevant to right now. We had a bad snowstorm, and Gigi had always taken, his name was Sammy Smith, he had always taken me to Corinth to spend Christmas Eve with him and his family, and they had 2 places they went, Theo and Dr. Frank's house. That was for dinner, and then a party afterwards at Dr. Norwood's. Then he had to drive me back to Holly Springs.
The same night.
The same night, and then drive himself back home the same night. So that was our Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Now
What did he say when he proposed, and what did he require?
He
That was before y'all were getting married.
the Christmas before we got married, he didn't get to come to get me because it was a bad snowstorm. That's the point. So I missed that Christmas. So after Christmas, he told me that he didn't want me to ever miss being with him on Christmas Eve again. It just wouldn't do. And he said, I love you and I want to marry you, comma, and you will have to join the Baptist church. I mean, it was, I love you. Of course, he didn't put the comma in, but he paused. And I want to marry you, comma, and you will have to join the Baptist church.
Not unconditional.
And the reason he said that, though, was that somebody named Griselda Green, Gigi, had married David Palmer, and she refused to join the Baptist church. And all hell broke loose. And her mother-in-law, David's mother, was Sammy's mother's best friend. And she was in the middle of it trying to get Gigi to join the Baptist church, and she never did. And so Sammy knew that if I didn't join the Baptist church, there'd be all kind of repercussions. Because Gigi, I think, had gotten hotboxed Gigi. Munya had kind of hotboxed Gigi, trying to get her to join the Baptist church and told her she used to be a Presbyterian and she joined the Baptist church and she should and all that, and she wouldn't. She never did.
Good for her. Okay.
But you did join the Baptist church.
Very briefly.
And then you pulled the whole family out of it, right?
Huh?
You
To the
pulled the whole
Methodist
family
church,
out of
the
it.
Presbyterian church.
Not only did she come out of it, but Sammy came out of it too,
Sammy
right?
came right out with me. He came over to that Presbyterian church and loved it.
Mm-hmm.
He was so happy in that church. He didn't know a church could be that nice and fun.
Were you playing music in the Presbyterian church?
I was playing the
The
organ.
organ in the Presbyterian.
That
And
was
one
the
in Holly
way-
Springs.
The way I worked it was, I had played the organ at Presbyterian Church in Holly Springs for 2 or 3 years before I got married.
Mhm.
And I was taking lessons in Memphis from Mr. Richard White, and also working as a court reporter. So when I got married, I joined the Baptist church with Sammy, as he told me I would have to do. Was baptized in the Baptist church and everything. And like that preacher just fine, he had been the preacher in Holly Springs and had gone with Mary Sanders.
Really?
He was doing some marriage counseling with her and went well for a little bit. And so the first time I met him, he asked me if I knew Miss Sandusky, and I said yes. And didn't tell him I knew about him. But anyway, he was just fine. But after he left, they got this new preacher. And so Sunday or two after he got there, he sent all my family, including you two, to hell. And so I told Sammy I wasn't ever going back to that church anymore. And
How did he send us to hell?
because you hadn't been under
The water? Mm-hmm. He said everybody who's not baptized is going to hell.
Yeah.
And he mentioned us specifically?
No.
Everybody who's
There
never
was a
been baptized.
generality. He just said that he believed in baptism by immersion, which I had.
Done. You've
Done.
been immersed, so you're okay.
I was okay, but
You didn't
and
know
Mama,
Daddy and
Mama had been immersed because she was in the Baptist church, but Daddy and
Me and Bill,
you and Bill,
Don and Lester.
Don, Lester, I wasn't gonna send any of y'all to hell.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my job.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And so, you,
So I think it was very theologically sound for me to say that I wasn't gonna send anybody to hell, and I wasn't gonna be in that church anymore.
but you had fulfilled technically the requirement. You joined.
That's right, I joined and was baptized. And
He didn't say, but you have to go to the Baptist
he
church
didn't
every
say that I
Sunday.
had to stay.
He just said you had to join.
Yeah, and I did. And if that's what it takes to get into heaven, I've been.
Yeah, right. So you got both bases covered. But then you started playing the Presbyterian, playing the.
Soon after, I walked with Joe Anderson every morning. And Joe Anderson was the choir director of the Presbyterian Church. And she knew a good thing when she saw it. And she grabbed me.
Yeah.
And I played there until I got married. Then.
But and then Sammy started.
No, that was after I was married. I did.
And so because you were playing the organ, Sammy might have come and started coming to hear
He
you
just
play.
came to hear me play and he
Then he
liked it.
liked it. He liked that.
But then I played until Fant was born.
Mm-hmm.
I had Alma and took off for probably a month or two. And then I went back. I got somebody to keep the children and I went back and played the organ.
Did you and Harder have a close relationship then, or I mean?
Harder got religion real bad.
Still has it, I think.
I think she does, but she got this really holy roly kind of religion. It wasn't, I have
You couldn't
religion.
talk anymore.
I have religion, but I belong to the Yankee Presbyterian Church, and it's more liberal and more. It's more about living a Christian life than it is about salvation.
It wouldn't be complete without talking a little bit about the dressing on Thanksgiving Day.
Well, you hadn't mentioned Bluebie.
Well, we moved on to cars. We can come back to Bluebie if we have some time.
Okay. Okay. Oh, Mama. Mama was real, real pretty. Y'all may have seen a picture of her. I don't know if you have or not, but she was real pretty and glamorous and loved pretty clothes and everything like that. High heels, all that stuff. So she came in my house on Thanksgiving Day, and I love to cook. I love to make real good things and cook. When I was a little bitty girl, I loved to cook. And so I had the dressing. The dressing was made by Mary Sandusty's grandmother's recipe, which I
It
don't,
all comes back to the Baptist church, doesn't it?
yeah, which I don't mind sharing with y'all. It's a real good recipe. It's very, very old. And so I had the dressing in the pan ready to put I had done everything for the dressing. All I had to do was just run it in the oven and get it real hot, maybe 20 or 30 minutes. And so Mama came in the kitchen, and the dressing was in a Pyrex glass casserole on the counter. And Mama dipped her finger in to taste it and knocked it off on the floor and broke the casserole. And what she did was run like a turkey.
She left the room.
She left those premises in a hurry. And so I got another Pyrex, which I happen to have, and greased it and put the dressing that was on the floor in the Pyrex.
It was a clean floor.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it was fairly clean.
Yeah. And you could scoop off just kind of the top layer.
Yeah.
Well, no,
Except for
no.
one thing.
Go ahead.
So I got it up and put it in the casserole and everything. Put the casserole in the oven, and we just went forward without telling anybody. And I certainly didn't. Mama, of course, didn't want Sammy to know.
Right.
You know.
That the dressing had glass in it.
They'd been on the floor.
She didn't know it.
Oh,
But
she didn't know.
she didn't know the dressing had glass in it.
Nobody did.
Nobody did, including
Just knew it had
me.
been on the floor.
I knew it'd been on the floor, and Mama did too, but I wasn't gonna tell them. But I got the dressing up off the floor, put it in a cleanly greased casserole, baked it in the oven. Everything was fine. We went to the table, put everything on the table, had the blessing. Everybody served their plates and everything. And of course, Sammy was the last person to serve because he was serving the turkey and dressing, serving everybody's plates and then passing them around, like that. I don't think they do it like that now, but they did then. And so, Sammy took a bite and he had this funny look on his mouth. His mouth was bleeding.
Yeah, I heard he say, Nancy, do you know where my mouth is bleeding?
Nancy, my mouth.
But anyway, he got into the bathroom and got the thing. He never did find out.
Well, did you just let everybody else keep on eating and?
Yeah, I left the table kind of with Samuel in his mouth. I thought kind of I had sort of
Yeah.
married duty, to him.
You told it once. I was at Thanksgiving dinner, and somebody said, Anola said, dressing is better. And Fant said, no glaze, no light.
Where all did you have to go to pick up hands?
Okay, well, I had, Mama was the youngest of five sisters. So we left car. Well, Sammy, I think, maybe took his mother and daddy in his car and just went straight over to Mom and Daddy's. So, Sammy was an only child, so Mama solved the problem of where we'd go for Christmas by inviting his parents. And that suited them fine too. So Sammy and his mother and daddy went to Holly Springs. I had to go to Ecru and pick up Aunt Ola. And she had on some gold slippers. And she said, Nancy, how do you like my shoes? I said, well, they're pretty. She said, well, I got them off the ship pile.
Did you have children in your car at the time?
I think maybe Sammy took the children with him.
Because he had a great big car.
Yeah. And so I had 4 adults to pick up anyway.
But you didn't have to go to Charleston to get Aunt Burley.
No, she either came to
She could do
Oxford
her
or
own,
she
yeah.
drove
Came to
home.
Aunt May.
So,
No.
but Aunt May was right there in town, but I had to get Aunt Ola and Webby and Uncle Wyatt and maybe Uncle Couple. But anyway, I went to Ecru and got Aunt Ola and maybe Uncle Cook had already died when she got those gold slippers. He probably had, because he probably wouldn't put up with that. And then we got Wary and Uncle Wyatt in New Albany. And we went on up to Holly Springs, and we probably went by and picked up Aunt Mud.
But that would take all day. That would take you all day to do that.
Well, no, I got a pretty early start.
And did you have to return them that night?
Well, sure. I can spend
What about buttering the lemon?
Well, that was after Aunt May was quite elderly, and we were having lunch in Oxford.
Downtown Grill.
Downtown. And so Patty Lewis's restaurant, and so I was sitting next to Aunt May, and she was elderly and still formidable though, and the dinner was going the way you'd expect a dinner would go, and everything was going on, and earlier in the meal there'd been something that involved lemon, and she had put it on her bread plate because she didn't want to use the lemon.
Well,
And then as I was, and then bread was passed and put on the bread plate. And then to my horror, I'm sitting next to her, she picks up the lemon and in a very deliberate way, cuts a little bit of butter and evenly spreads the butter on the lemon. I knew what was going to happen, but I just felt like I was powerless to stop it. It never been part of my life to say, don't do that, Aunt May. And so I was in a great dilemma, could I accidentally jostle it out of her hand, or what was I going to do? And so she got it right to her mouth, and I said, Aunt May, and she stopped. And I said, I think that's a lemon. And so she did not get mad, she put it down. But
she was getting where her eyesight was probably bad, but we didn't know it.
No.
She certainly wouldn't go to the eye doctor or anything like that.
Nothing like that.
My daddy's first cousin, Margaret Shackelford, left her very sizable estate to the National Audubon Society. And it was the largest bequest the National Audubon Society had ever received. It was very large. And so they came down and I cleaned up the house and got it ready for them and everything. It was just a long nightmare. And I was on the board of the Audubon Society then for a long time. And when I resigned, I got that for Orma. And it was just a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing for Orma. He is a director of the Audubon Society and the Back of Holly Springs.
And he does a good job.
And he does a good job. But he's just very prominent in Holly Springs, although he's not from there.
Well,
but I'm very proud that I was able to do that for him.
But I remember also, sometimes they had a woman who was the director.
Yeah.
And she was going with a man. And, well, there were two things. The girl said, when there's a man leader, he said, you said, oh, what does she do? The girlfriend, and he said, she's a painter. And you said, oh, really? Where are her pictures? And he said, she's a house painter.
Yeah, that's right.
But and the boy side of it, so there's a woman there who's important. I know she's the director. And she had a boyfriend or a husband or something, and you said, well, what does he do? This is, being polite.
That's just being polite. What does he do?
He said, she said, he works for the railroad. And you said, like, all the live long day. He was not a station messenger. He was a laborer.
A laborer on the railroad track.
And your way of getting that's all the live long day?
Well, Fant was my third child, and I had always insisted on having my babies in Memphis because I didn't think they had a good birthing place in Corinth, which they didn't, and they didn't have an obstetrician in Corinth either. So I was going to Memphis and going to have the baby in Memphis. So I was, Fant was expected, and there was a big ice storm where the roads were impassable. And it was forecast, and so Sammy took me to Memphis, And I stayed with the Braxtones, who were our next door neighbors in Corinth and had moved to Memphis. And Vernon and Becky Braxton were my very best friends. And Jan and her husband, Lee Stein, was supposed to be here for this, but they couldn't come. But anyway, Vernon and Becky were probably 15, 20 years older than I was. And I was going to stay with them, and it was the night of Jan's first dance. So it was a big night. And
Their daughter.
Yeah, Jan's first dance, and Becky and Vernon had me, and then Becky's sister was there with her husband too. Mm-hmm. And so it was just a house full of company, just a house full. And I was trying to be, not much trouble or anything. But I actually did go into labor and in the snowstorm. And Jan was at the dance, and Vernon drove me to the Baptist Hospital. And it was supposed to be a 15-minute drive, and it took him an hour and a half, but he got me there safely. Mm-hmm. And when I got there, I was so close to delivery that they didn't do anything but put me on the delivery table. Mm-hmm. They didn't do anything preliminaries at all. No anesthetic, no nothing. The baby just arrived, yeah. And I was real interested in it, and Barbara Fant was interested too, because she said that she wanted me to give a report to the Childbirth Society of Washington and the La Leshy. Yeah. And so I did. I wrote it all up for them. But it was just real exciting. It was just real interesting.
And was it?
It was natural childbirth, unintentional.
Yeah.
The person who drove me to the hospital, Vernon Braxton, was about 15, 20 years older than I was, and he came in the next day, and they said, well, nobody's allowed in here except the father. He said, well, I am the father. So they let him in, and then he went out, and then a little while later, a friend of mine from the Delta named Bob Bailey came. And they said, well, nobody's allowed in except the father. And Bob said, well, I am the father. So he came in. And so we had a nice little visit. About the middle of the afternoon, the father arrived. He had had a hard time getting there through the ice storm. And when he got there, he came in and he said, he wanted to see me. And they said, well, and that he was the father. And they said, well, that little bitch doesn't even know who the father is. Now, that's the truth.
Yeah. Now, what about, were you ever leader of the Cub Scouts? Was that for Fant or Orma?
It was for Orma. For maybe both of them, probably both of them. Judy and I did it for Fant, too. Orma, yeah, I led both of them. Virginia McFarland and I did it for Orma, and then Judy Davis and I did it for Fant. Mm-hmm.
Was there any memorable experiences doing that?
Well, we went to the hospital, St. Jude, and we went to that Indian place, that Indian man place on the Mississippi River. Is that what you want?
Yeah. No, that's good. You did interesting things. Now, have you ever been stopped by the law for a traffic violation or speeding?
Sure. Have you?
Yes. And I have been stopped by the law for speeding when you were in the car with me on the Blue Ridge Parkway when we were driving up to New York. And you said, don't, before when he was walking up to the car, don't worry about it, because I know, is it Hugh Ray? I know the U.S. Attorney in Oxford, and this is all going to go back. This is in the federal system. He'll go back to Oxford, and I will fix it up.
I know the United States Attorney.
Yeah, that's so right. Don't worry about it. They'll be all fine. It's just a federal ticket. And so the park ranger was a little bit gruff about it, and you might have leaned over and said,
you were going about 50, I thought.
Huh?
You were probably going about 50.
Yeah, on 45 Parkway, and so Nancy might have leaned over and said something, and he answered her in a little bit of a police-like way, and Nancy said, Ruff, get out and beat him up. And I declined to, because I knew you knew the U.S. attorney who might help me 5 miles over the speed limit, but not
Yeah, well,
not beating up a park ranger 3 times my size. Okay, let me give some short answer questions.
Okay.
Flower honeysuckle. I don't know.
okay. Flower honeysuckle was the name of a woman in Ripley. And I had a wonderful man named Jimmy Spears who helped me with my husband when he was terminally ill with a brain tumor. And Jimmy was one of the best friends I've ever had. At my husband's funeral, the person that sat on the front pew with me was Jimmy Spears and his wife. None of the children, not his mother, anybody. They were the ones. Jimmy Spears saved my life. So after, about a week after Sammy's death, I took Jimmy out to the hospital to see if he could, if Frances Morgan would give him a job. She was the Presbyterian preacher's wife, and she was the head of hiring at the hospital, and I thought maybe she could help Jimmy. So she helped Jimmy get a job at the nursing home. And Jimmy got a job at the nursing home, and you know, everybody thought it was so nice, and they thought it was so wonderful that I had gotten Jimmy placed and everything like that. And I was working at the library, and about 8 o'clock one morning, the phone rang, and it was Noah Stanley, and she said, "Nancy." Jimmy's in the hospital. Jimmy had started going with flower honeysuckle, and Annie Mae had shot him. And it was 8 o'clock in the morning. There I was, you know, trying to hold down my new job in the library, and something like that had happened.
Well, that's who flower honeysuckle was. Now,
She was a whore from Ripley.
what about your Halloween party where, and there's a typo here, it says, where they slid into the pool?
Slid into the basement, the bucket. Mama had a Halloween party for me. Daddy was overseas, and Mama had a Halloween party for me in the basement. And the basement windows were up high in the basement, but they were ground level outside. So she had a ghost or something standing at one of the windows, and they had the sliding board coming from the window down to the floor of the basement. And then you'd come in your costume and slide down the slide.
That's so great.
Yeah, and Doll was in the little closet down there under the stairs, and she was a fortune teller. And that's all I remember about it.
That's a great party.
Except they had a paper tablecloth on that big ping pong table, and I was real proud of the ping pong tablecloth, you know. Well, Ma Jean Jones got up there and danced on the tablecloth and tore it up.
Now, you mentioned Bluebee. What was her most famous literary work?
Bluebee? I don't know that she ever wrote anything.
Oh my
Gosh. She wrote an autobiography.
Oh, yeah, she wrote my autobiography.
She wrote
That's right.
her autobiography.
Yeah, it was a story about me.
Right.
She wrote.
But it was written in her first
in her
person.
first person.
And
yeah.
I have that, and
I
it's
did
wonderful,
too. I did
priceless.
too. It was good.
But the way you wrote your biography, the way Nancy wrote her biography, was to have it come from the mouth of her doll.
Yeah, Bluebee was my doll I slept with every night.
And still do?
Well, I didn't while I was married.
No.
At all.
Oh, okay.
But I did do now. But anyway, Bluebee was a year younger than I was. This friend of ours named Mom Bo had given her to me. And I loved Bluebee. And they didn't like the name of Bluebee, and they didn't like the fact that I wouldn't let her wear anything but blue. And there were just a lot of things. But I was kind of peculiar, you know. I just loved blue and loved Bluebee. And Bluebee's still over there.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say this about Bluebee. I will confess
You throw
that
her to the dog.
Yeah, I would throw it to the dog sometime. But worse than that, I had, I would bother Nancy by touching her. She can't stand to be touched. She never wants to be touched by anyone. She doesn't like a church where they have the passing of the peace. And you have to turn her and hug the people in the pew. She doesn't like that. She doesn't like to be touched. And so my parents put me under strict rules not to touch her. But I found that if I pointed at her like I was gonna touch her, it would have the same effect.
Just about as bad.
Yeah, and so my parents got on that and said I couldn't point at her. And then I found that if I pointed at Bluey, it would have the same effect also. And so that worked for a while.
Les Archie was a real good friend of Alma's. And Les Archie's mother was a friend of mine, and his daddy had died, and he was in the Cub Scout troop, and you know, everybody was trying to be nice. I took him just out of the goodness of my heart because he was the worst boy there was. He was really a bad boy. And what we would do is we'd start the scout meeting, and if Les wasn't doing right, we'd just lock him up in the car and we'd go on and have the scout meeting. Well, we went on through the Cub Scouts, and I never told his mother, never told him. And he never told his mother either. And he got up in the Boy Scouts and did real well, and one day he got to be an Eagle Scout. And I was invited to the Eagle ceremony, and Virginia McFarland and I had been the Cub Scout leaders. And so they said at the ceremony, they wanted everybody that helped Les to be an Eagle Scout to stand up, and we did. And we've always thought that was yeah, and he was an Eagle Scout, and he's turned out to be a fine, upstanding citizen. And he never told anybody. We locked him in the car, and we never told anybody that he cut up.
This is something I remember very well. When Bill was born, and when Bill was born, they still had rules about who could. And so you and I and maybe Daddy were up there visiting, and the nurse came and said, we're going to bring the baby in for the mother, and everybody has to leave the room. And Nancy got in the bathroom and hid. And I was very much opposed to it. I said, they have a reason for this, Nancy. They don't want strange people, but it's to no avail, because you hid in the bathroom, and as soon as the nurse was gone,
kissed on Bill and loved on him and everything. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that.
You put your bark on me.
I've always been kind of, if there was a rule made, it was a challenge to me to break it rather than keep it.
And not get caught.
And not get caught, that's right.
I am just really proud to have such a wonderful sister in Nancy and brother in Ruff, and participating in this has been a real joy.
Well, I'm proud to have a sister like Nancy and a brother like Bill, and participating with this has been a joy. I think we could go on forever. We've already had a couple of battery changes in the camera, so I don't think we can go a lot longer.
I think it was a real nice idea to video me, and I'll be anxious to see what it looks like. As I lay sleeping, I held you in my arms. As I walked here, I was mistaken. So I hold my hand. Everybody. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Happy birthday, dear Nancy. Happy birthday to you.
She said she'll see you in 20 years.